Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, welcome back to everybody here on USA Global TV and Radio, as well as our LinkedIn followers. It is wonderful being with you in 2024, yes, the start of the new year. And I thought, as we are starting the new year, and some of us might be trying out those New Year's resolutions again, or for the first time, we might look at expectation setting today, and this might be helpful not only for your New Year's resolutions, but in general to understand how you are setting expectations, as well as how you interact with other people's expectations that they set, and possibly as a leader, how this might help you when you think about your team and your wider organizational environment as well. So, of course, that is a mouthful. Where do we start with all of this? I, over the holiday break, had a bit of a read and found Gretchen Rubin's book called The Four Tendencies. In her book, she explains the premise on which we technically all have a tendency to go towards a little more or a little less. So let me lay it out for you guys so that you can see where it is that you fit into this and how, in all likelihood, it needs to influence, or maybe a few tweaks needs to be made for those resolutions that you decided to set for the new year, or other expectations that you have for yourself or your team. So the first one is when we are looking at internal as well as external expectations. Now, when we think of expectations, these are, for instance, if it is an external expectations, we have somebody else that asks us or instructs us to do something specific. Here you can think of obeying the rules of the road. Or it might be that you have a specific mandate from somebody at work. Or a colleague asks you to help them out on a project. So all of these are different forms of expectations, and we all interact with them a little bit differently. Then internal expectations are those expectations where we say we want to do something. So say, for instance, we decide that, and this is normally typical, especially at the beginning of the year, we want to look at living a healthier life, or going on a diet of some sort, or improving something in our environment or about ourselves that we have found maybe in 2023 didn't quite work as well as we thought it did. So those are all internal expectations and things that we want for ourselves, and then also have to work at in order for us to get it. Now, what Gretchen mentions in her book is that there's 4 different types of tendencies. And the very first one is the upholder. So what the upholder does is external expectations as well as internal expectations are quite easy for them to uphold, literally where the name comes from. So if somebody were to ask them to do something, they will get it done. You don't need to check up on them. They will make sure that it's done by whenever the date is that they agreed on, and no worries there whatsoever. They also, when they set expectations for themselves and decide that they want to do something, so maybe they want to start a new fitness regime, or they want to implement something specific like journaling into their daily routine, that is quite easy for them to do as well. They also typically enjoy routines a little bit more than most of us, because that makes it easier for them to implement the things that they want to do and to keep to their expectations. They also have a tendency to love lists. So that is the very, very first one. And if you are an upholder, New Year's resolutions will definitely not be a problem for you. You would have decided that this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And you will be, now being a little bit further into January, well on your way in accomplishing whatever it is that you have set yourself up for. Now, the next one, we will go to the questioner. So the questioner is those of us that have a tendency to question those, especially external expectations. We want to know why. Why do we need to do this? Why is this important? Why does that need to happen right now this specific way? So for questioners, especially when it comes to external expectations, they need to have information. It also might drive some other people nuts, because don't you already have enough information? Typically, questioners, and hence why the name, has a lot of questions. When it comes to something such as New Year's resolutions, they say that, well, the 1st of January is an arbitrary date. I can start my resolution whenever I want to, and it doesn't need to start on the 1st of January. It can start in the middle of January. It can start in the beginning of the year. So maybe it might be in February or in March. But when they decided that this is something that they're going to do, this tendency stick to it. They find it fairly easy for them to decide this is what I want to be doing, and then going for that. They have an internal motivation. When, however, it comes to external expectations, they need to understand the whys behind it, have enough information, and then create an internal expectation for themselves that would help drive them to actually get to that external expectation and get that sorted out. So if you are maybe a leader to somebody that is a questioner, or a couple of somebodies that's questioners, especially in the engineering field, we have a tendency to have quite a few of those, then information definitely a key thing to help them with. So the better they can understand the reasoning behind why this is important to do and what around it is the importance of it, the easier it is for them to then go out and do the thing. Of course, if you can link it into any of their internal things that they want to achieve, so maybe you know that your team member wants to grow their project management skill, and this specific task is maybe not directly linked, but there is a loose link to project management. Link it up for them, help them out with that, and also give them a little bit more information and the whys around it, so it helps them out to be able to meet those expectations. And of course, as I mentioned, New Year's expectations will, well, in general for questioners, happens when it happens. Then we also have on the opposite side, so those of us that have the external expectations all sorted out, we can do those really, really well. But the internal expectations we struggle with a little bit more. We have those as the obligers. So what Gretchen said in her book around obligers are that obligers typically find it really easy when they have external expectations to meet those. So if you think about being in school and having to study for a test in order to do well. Well, for an obliger, that's really easy. They will go, they will sit down, they will study for the test. They know what the consequences are of not doing that because, well, might fail a few tests there if we don't do the study that we need to do. And then they will go and write their test and hopefully get really good marks as well. So for obligers in the workplace, typically not a lot of questions. So if we have a new initiative or a new idea with obligers, they'll be like, yep, okay, what is it that I need to do? And off they go and do it. They don't necessarily ask a lot of questions. They don't need all that much information. They do need to understand what the consequences would be for not doing whatever the thing is that they need to be doing. And other than that, for them, it's really easy for external types of expectations. Now, this is where it gets very interesting, especially for you obligers out there. New Year's resolutions, one of the reasons why you keep making them and in all likelihood not lasting a week is because we haven't been set up correctly. What do I mean by this? Well, obligers' internal expectations are a lot more difficult to meet because there we need to, well, account to ourselves. Now, obligers are really great at accounting to other people and putting others' needs first. They have a little bit more trouble doing it for themselves. So if they really want to do something, for instance, getting into that new fitness regime, if they decided that they want to do this at home all by themselves, definitely not the best idea. If, however, they decided that they want to go and join a gym and specifically make sure that they enroll in classes where they have other people that they need to account to, a lot better idea, because now they have a accountability system. And that's really what obligers need. So when we think about obligers, it's really around creating that system that would help us to be able to get to the internal expectations that we have. So it is setting ourselves up in a way that works well. Now, one of the caveats that we need to take into consideration, especially with obligers, is the fact that, say, for instance, we have a group, and in the group we have a couple of questioners, and we have a couple of obligers. And this is an accountability group. The obligers, we say, for instance, want to all write a piece of work, and it needs to be in at a specific date. Now, if that wasn't a good enough reason for the questioners, some of them may do it and some of them may not do it. For the obligers, most of them will do it. If we get together now as a group and some of the questioners say, oh, well, I didn't really do that because whatever the reason was, the obligers will then start to feel that the accountability isn't strong enough for them. So as an obliger, understanding what type of accountability you need in order for you to actually do the thing. What is going to be the consequence that is going to be severe enough that you feel like, yep, okay, my external accountability is to the right degree that I would actually get this done. So understanding that really well about yourself and what it is that you need makes it a little bit easier for you then to also hit those internal expectations and not only the external expectations. Of course, in the workforce, it is a lot easier for the boss to dish out work to the obligers. So leaders, what I want you to take into consideration with these tendencies is that the obliger, even though they might continuously say yes to tasks, can easily be overloaded. So please do take care of them. They are a valuable resource. And we also need to make sure that we don't put all of the workload on one person and have it equally distributed. So something to maybe take note of when the same person keeps putting their hand up for stuff. Then we have our very, very last one. And this, yes, it has an apt name. It is called the rebels. And typically with rebels, they may or may not have a cause for rebellion. So with the rebels, what happens is internal expectations as well as external expectations are both basically thrown to the wind, and they will do whatever they feel like at that moment. So for them, New Year's resolutions, why bother? I don't feel like it. If I feel like it, I will do it. If I don't feel like it, I won't do it. That's the way that rebels will typically reason about it. And what rebels really need is choice. They need to feel that they can choose when and when not to do a specific thing. So for rebels, life can sometimes be really tricky, even for themselves, not only for those around them. Because sometimes rebels really want to do something, right? They really want to upskill. They really want to follow that new fitness routine. And then they start with it. And somebody might say, oh, you've been doing so well on this fitness routine. And all of a sudden they drop it. And the reason why they drop it is literally because this other person was encouraging them, thinking that it is encouragement, right? And they didn't find it encouraging. They found it as a compliance to somebody else's expectation, and then decided that, well, I'm not going to comply to that expectation, and dropped it. Now, unfortunately, it is a little bit of a case of cutting your own nose off and spoiling your face. And rebels need to understand that within what they are doing, they need that extra little bit of information so that they can make the appropriate choice. So for rebels and those leaders that might be leading rebels, or you might be a rebel yourself, the things to take into consideration to help you out is having sufficient information about the choices that you have, then having all the possible things that might go wrong, all the risks, all the things that can be consequences for you, whether you go with the one choice or with the other, right? So both of them will have a consequence or maybe several consequences. So understanding what it is that you are actually signing up for, and then last but not least, still providing choice. So giving the person the choice to go for whichever one it is they want to choose. But now at least they have sufficient information to make a hopefully informed decision around it. Of course, also with rebels, And if you have a rebel in your life, you will know pressure does not work at all. In all likelihood, if pressure is applied, they will go in the opposite direction. So with rebels, do not necessarily do that. It won't be helpful. So now that you have a bit better of an idea of the 4 tendencies, think about what your tendency might be and how do you typically operate. Now, with these tendencies, yes, they do have overlapping circles. So when you think about the upholder, they can maybe go a little bit more to the questioner, or they might be going a little bit more to obliger. Or when you think about questioner, they might go a little bit more to upholder or a little bit more to rebel. With your obliger, it might be a little bit more upholder or a little bit more rebel. And some of the things that happens with obligers specifically is that they have a tendency to oblige, and then at a stage crack. So the external expectation wasn't really true to their core. And then at a stage, it becomes too much. And because it becomes too much, they need to protect themselves and they go into rebel mode. So they will just all of a sudden say no, uncharacteristically so for them. And that's why it happens. It is because they are a little bit closer to rebel. And, well, if you keep pushing a person in a certain direction, they don't really want to go in that direction at some point. They will definitely stand up for themselves. For some people, it takes a little bit longer than others. And that is the case with the obliger because of that internal expectations that lags just a little bit. And then, of course, with our rebels, we can have a little bit questioning or a little bit obliging. So understanding that about ourselves already helps us to set ourselves up in a way where it is a little easier to craft our expectations in a way that suits us. Then, as leaders, we also need to think about how we want to craft our expectations for our team members. Now, if you utilize the rule of thumb, literally the 3 things to take into consideration: give them information, give them whatever the consequences would be, and also give them choice. You should cover all of the different tendencies. And when you have obligers, make sure that you have clear accountability that works for them. That should sort out most of the expectations setting within your team. And now that you know how to do that a little bit better, hopefully you can set up your New Year's expectations, if you have made any, in a way that you would actually be able to follow through and make 2024 the best year ever, if so you choose. Well, with that, this is the end of our episode for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time around here on USA Global TV. Bye.